to 65, chapter 2. So let's see if I can play it way up here. व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भगवद्वेषिणीम् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम् मूकं करोति वाचालं भङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्. Just a moment, I realized I forgot to make provision for turning the page. Okay, so. Arjuna Vacha Sthidaprajñasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava Sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. Shri Bhagavan Vacha प्रजहाति यदा कामान् सर्वान् पार्थमनोगतान् आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः स्थितप्रज्ञस्तदुच्यते दुःखेष्वनुद्विग्नमनाः सुखेषु विगतस्पृहः वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीर्मुनिरुच्यते यः सर्वत्रानभिस्नेहः तत्प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता यदा संहरते चायं कुर्मोऽङ्गानीव सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निहाहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जं रसोऽप्यस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते यततो यपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसभं मनः तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्येन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः सङ्गस्तेषुपजायते संगात् संजायते कामः कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति ragadvesha-niyuktaistu vishayanindriyaischaran atmavasyairvidheyatma prasadamadigatchati prasade sarvadukhanam hanirasyopadayate prasanna-chetaso yashu buddhi paryavadishtate. So we'll continue with the study of the Gita with interpretation based mainly on Madhusudana Saraswati's commentary. Last class at the end of July, we came to, we were on we were about to start verses 62 and 63. But as I said then, I want to go back and start again at verse 54 to recapitulate, because these are extremely important verses. These are what are called the Sthita Prajna Lakshanas, the qualities of a person of steady wisdom. So in what had gone before verse 54, Sri Krishna had just been speaking about one who is completely immersed in the self, who's remain undisturbed and undistracted in the Supreme Self, then you will attain to yoga, perfect yoga. That is perfect union with the truth, perfect enlightenment, perfect freedom. And so then in verse 54, Arjuna asks a natural question. It says, Arjuna vacha stita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava stitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. So, Krishna, how does the person of steady wisdom, the stita prajna, how does such a person speak? How does such a person sit? How does such a person walk? Please tell me this. So as I said back in July in the last classes, that this is a interesting question, because you would think if he's going to tell about or ask about a person of steady wisdom, you would ask about the state of consciousness. What is the state of the mind of such a person? What is his consciousness? What is the quality of the mind of such a person? But instead of asking that, he asks, how does such a person speak? How does such a person sit? How does such a person walk? And as I said then, that's significant because a person who has attained to a high state of illumination, everything about them becomes changed. It's said in the Yoga Vashishta that one should listen even to the jokes of a person of illumination, because even the jokings of a person of illumination will be tinged with their illumination. As you see in the case of Sri Ramakrishna, everything he did, everything he said, all of his laughter, his joking, his playfulness, everything was colored by the state of his illumination. And so the person of steady wisdom, the person who is immersed in the self, a person who has realized the self, the person whose mind cannot be affected by anything in the world, such a person, their speech is different, their sitting is different, their movement is different. To us, it may look the same as anyone. And so there are people who saw Sri Ramakrishna, people who saw Swami Vivekananda, and other great souls, Ramana Maharshi and so forth, who just saw an ordinary person. But to people who had some sensitivity, they would see in all of their least actions, the smallest actions, they would see something about them was different. And as I said back in July, when I used to see people like Swami Vireshwarananda, the president of the order, and my teacher, Swami Nirvanananda, who had been the attendant on Swami Brahmananda, and Swami Brahmananda had blessed him with the knowledge of Brahman in this very life. Swami Saradeshananda, an attendant on the Holy Mother, and such people, you could see the significance of this question, because just looking at them, you felt that you were seeing spirituality embodied. You saw that just the appearance of them, it's not that they were radiating rainbows and lights and flashes of lightning or anything like that. No. If you weren't sensitive, you'd just look and see an ordinary person sitting there, sitting sort of still, kind of boring, nothing much happening. But if you were sensitive, you could see that no, these people were spirituality embodied. They were the embodiment of spirituality. You felt when seeing them that you were seeing freedom itself. You were seeing illumination itself, enlightenment itself. It was a totally different experience from seeing an ordinary person, even a relatively high spiritual aspirant who has not yet attained to that state. Different from them also, quite different from them. That's why they were in a different category. Swami Ashokananda, a great Swami of our order, who was head of the San Francisco Center for many years, he said that when he was a boy in his teens, when he first went from what's now Bangladesh, at that time East Bengal, undivided Bengal, when he went from East Bengal to Calcutta, to Belar Mutt, he had a teacher. He was very fortunate. He had a teacher in East Bengal who was a devotee of the newly founded Ramakrishna Mission. And so his teacher took him to Belar Mutt. And he said that when he saw the direct disciples, some of them, not all of them, but the direct disciples, at the Belar Mutt on a festival day, I think he went for, I forget for sure, but I think it was at the time of Ramakrishna's birth celebration. He said that just seeing them, he thought, I've never seen such people before in my life. I couldn't imagine that such people could exist. People that were so completely free. He saw it. He was just a boy. And yet he could see that these were not like any ordinary people. These were extraordinary people. Just visually, he was impressed with something that was not visual, but something that impresses the eye at the same time as you see the visual scene. There's something else that impresses a deep part of the mind as well. And so he said, I couldn't imagine that there were people who, of such freedom, such joy, such unaffected by anything in the world. And so again, Arjuna asks that question because of that. O Keshava, what is the description of a person of steady wisdom who is self-absorbed? How does the man of steady wisdom speak? How does he sit? How does he move about? Again, I won't always mention this because it gets in the way. But let me just say that this is the problem with language. That here's the man of steady wisdom. Actually, it doesn't say anything about a man here at all, the person of steady wisdom. Because the person of steady wisdom, the state of illumination, is not gender specific at all. It's open to everyone, as the Gita itself says later. So then Sri Krishna answers him and begins the answer by saying, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanyeva Atmana Tushta Stita Prajnastaruchyate. So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Blessed Lord said. So let me back up for a minute from what we were talking about and say a word about Sri Bhagavan, because the Gita is known as the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes it's called the Celestial Song, Song Celestial, as Sir Edwin Arnold produced a beautiful translation of the Gita. He was the one who also wrote The Light of Asia, the poetical life of Buddha, back in the 19th century. And he also produced a translation of the Bhagavad Gita called the Song Celestial. So Bhagavad Gita could be Song Celestial, or it could be the Song of God, which is the way Swami Prabhupada translates his translation, the Song of God. So again, one of these specialties of the Gita, one of the many special features of the Gita is that it presents Sri Krishna as an avatar, as an incarnation of God, as God himself. So in the Vedas, you don't find the idea of the incarnation. In the Vedas and the Upanishads, there's no idea of the incarnation of God. That was a later development. But not much later. It came at the time of the Mahabharata, the Vishnu Purana, which were very early texts. The Mahabharata, at least, was written, at least the basic text of the Mahabharata, including the Gita, was written still during the Vedic age, the late Vedic age. And so it was a very early text, but it was after the main text of the Vedas had already been composed. But when the Vedic age was still alive, again, the Vedic age came to an end with the Buddha. The Buddha, one man himself, put an end to the Vedic age, and then began classical Hinduism as well as Buddhism. But the idea of God as incarnation, that was something that came in the late Vedic age, traced back to the Mahabharata, the Vishnu Purana, and to the earlier Ramayana, which also was written in the late Vedic age, but even earlier than the Mahabharata. The story of Rama, the story of Krishna, where you find this idea growing that God, not himself, God itself, divinity itself, incarnates in human form from time to time in human history. Why did they come up with that idea? Because they saw people like Sri Krishna, like Sri Rama, which they couldn't explain in any other way. People who were so great even from their birth, who manifested spiritual qualities even from their birth. The rest of us spend a lifetime working to acquire spiritual qualities, to attain to enlightenment, to attain to the knowledge of divinity. But there are certain people at long intervals. This modern idea that everybody has to be an incarnation, that's a ridiculous perversion of Hinduism. It's a cheapening of Hinduism, and it's a great shame to the tradition that this has grown all over India and spread also. Anybody that wants to be a teacher has to declare themselves an incarnation. And so everybody nowadays is an incarnation of God. No, that's not the idea. The idea is that once in great lengths of periods, lengths of time, like every 500 years or so, there's a great manifestation of divinity who is born on earth, who from their childhood itself, they're spiritually awakened. From the childhood itself, their spirituality is on the very surface of them. From the childhood itself, they go into high states of consciousness. From childhood itself, they can bless people with powerful spiritual blessings. And in their lifetime, many, many people are liberated by their direct influence, and after they pass away for long ages after that, many, many people are liberated. As in the case of people like Jesus, in the case of Buddha, in the case of Rama, Krishna, etc. So such people are extraordinary. Again, it's a terrible cheapening of that tradition to call everybody nowadays an incarnation. Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda, when he returned from Bangladesh, he said that in Dhaka itself, there are about 25 different incarnations of God right now. So that's the cheapening of it. But that reason I don't even like to speak of Sri Ramakrishna as an incarnation, because it's a demeaning. Swami Vivekananda once was asked, was Sri Ramakrishna an incarnation of God? And Swamiji said, to call him an incarnation of God is to demean him, because of the way the term is used nowadays. So, but this is called the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord's song, God's song, because Sri Krishna was recognized as an extraordinary person who from his very birth manifested extraordinary qualities. His life as we know it now is highly mythologized. As I said in the talk on Sunday about Sri Krishna, highly mythologized, so we don't take that as a historical account of Sri Krishna, though certainly there's a historical core. But what the core itself is, and to distinguish it from the stories now, is impossible, and it doesn't matter. Because the stories themselves point to their exaggerations of who Sri Krishna himself was. Exaggerations of the outward actions of Sri Krishna. And as Swami Vivekananda, when we read the myths of different countries and different cultures, then they're pointing to a historical core, and that's what we want. And so don't worry about the exact historical nature. That's not recoverable now anyway. But look at what all of the myths are pointing to. And in the case of Sri Krishna, it was someone who was completely unattached in the midst of all of his actions, completely unattached in the midst of everything that he did, who was immersed in the bliss of the self at all times, even in the most distressing circumstances, like the battlefield. In the midst of the battlefield, his mind is completely poised. And so, again, it's the song of God, because by that time, Sri Krishna was recognized as not an ordinary person, not one who had to struggle to attain enlightenment, not one who was born because he had to be born because of past karma, as in the case with the rest of us, but one who came from a state of perfection, who had already attained to perfection, who was already perfect, who was already identified with God. And out of the free will and grace of that illumined person, he took birth in order to bring enlightenment to others. And so it said that the incarnation is comes from the heart of God, from the all-loving and compassionate heart of God, to manifest the grace of divinity on earth. That's the very purpose of the incarnation. So the Blessed Lord said, verse 55, he said, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogatan. When one renounces completely, prajahati, prakrishta rupena jahati, when he completely renounces all of the desires of the mind, manogatan, gone into the mind, when he's renounced all of the desires of the mind. Again, this is speaking of a realized soul, like we hope to be one day, who had desires in the mind, unlike the incarnation, who was born from a state of freedom, but who had desires in the mind, but he succeeded in renouncing all of the desires of the mind. Atmanyeva atmanatushta, and who is satisfied in the self by the self. All of his satisfaction is within the self itself. He needs nothing outside, because he's realized the self, which is the foundation of the whole universe. Why do we desire anything? Why do we want anything? Because we think it will make us happy. We're not happy, we're not fulfilled, we're not content. We feel dissatisfied, we feel incomplete, and so we want something that will complete us, something that will bring us happiness, and so we desire something. We get it, we feel happy for a few minutes, and then we either want it again or we want something else. Because no little thing can satisfy the longing in the heart. Because what the heart wants is the infinite. And a little thing can't satisfy the infinite. Because something within us has never forgotten that we are the infinite. We are the infinite reality itself. But because we've forgotten it, we feel incomplete. Because we've forgotten it. But we haven't forgotten it completely, and that's why we can never be satisfied with a little thing. We feel a little bit of happiness for a few minutes, and then that's gone, and we want something else. Because we know, we have an intuition, because of that, because we're not completely forgetful. We have an intuition that we should be completely satisfied. There's something that will satisfy us completely. But this, the person of steady wisdom, the Stita Prajna, has realized the self, realized himself, herself, realized that they are the infinite itself. The whole universe floats in the ocean of their being. One of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, I never heard which one it was, but one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna attained to a state where he said that the whole universe he saw as a tiny little bubble floating on the vast ocean of divinity, on the vast ocean of his own self, on the vast ocean of God. This whole universe, which to us looks so big, he saw as a tiny little bubble on the far distant horizon of the ocean of the self. And that's the truth. That's the truth. That's what we want. And so the Stita Prajna is one who has realized a state like that, realized the infinity of the self, and is satisfied in the self by the self. Satisfied by the self. The self is the source of his or her satisfaction. Satisfied in the self, because immersed in the self, there's nothing else. Everything is the self. Even that bubble of the universe is a bubble of water made out of that same ocean of the self. Everything here is just a little bubble made of that same water of the infinite ocean of the blissful self, the perfect self, the all-knowing, all-loving, all-wise, ever-awake self. Everything that we see here is just a little bubble floating on that ocean. And yet the strange thing is that due to Maya, due to ignorance, due to illusion, we see this as separate from the self. And we see this as real and forget the self. This is, Vedanta doesn't teach that this is illusion. It says that we're seeing it wrongly. This is just froth on the ocean of the self. It's made of the same stuff. It's made of pure consciousness, pure divinity, pure wisdom, pure light. But we see it as dull, dead, hard, and sentient matter. And so the Stita Prajna is one who, prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamano gatan, has completely renounced all desires of the mind, and who's completely satisfied by the self, in the self, tushta, completely contented, completely satisfied. Stita prajnastarochate, that such a one is called a Stita Prajna, a person of steady wisdom. And then he let me tell another story I wanted to tell. I probably told it back in July, but let me tell it again now. One of the Swamis I mentioned a few minutes ago, among those that I had seen, who you could see spirituality just looking at them. You saw that they were embodied spirituality because they were completely free. They had gone beyond the universe. The Swami Nirvanananda was one of those. He was, again, blessed by Swami Brahmananda. He was the sevak, the attendant on Swami Brahmananda. And Swami Brahmananda, when he was passing away in 1922, he called this young monk to him and said, "You have served me very well. I bless you from the bottom of my heart. But I'm a penniless beggar. What do I have to give you? But I bless you that you have the knowledge of Brahman in this very life." And so many years later, when I knew him in the 1970s and early 80s, when he was a very old man, in his 80s, as far as age goes, one of our monks asked him, "Maharaj, Swami Brahmananda told you that he blessed you with the knowledge of Brahman in this very life. Have you had the knowledge of Brahman?" And so Swami Nirvanananda said, "By the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, by the grace of the Holy Mother, by the grace of Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda, not a single desire arises in my mind." And so the monk said, "But Maharaj, is that what we call nirvana? Is that the same as nirvana, the state of enlightenment?" And he just repeated, "By the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, by the grace of the Holy Mother, by the grace of Swamiji and Swami Brahmananda, not a single desire arises in my mind." So he was a Stita Prajna. He was a man of steady wisdom who prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogatan, completely beyond all desires. How could a desire arise in his mind when he was reality itself? When he knew the infinity of being itself and was identified with that, what small thing is he going to desire? So yes, we would see him eating, we would see him talking, we would see him sitting, we would see him standing up and so forth. But from his standpoint, he was immersed in the light of the self and knew himself as the self. So in verse 56, Sri Krishna continues, "Dukeshvanudvigna mana sukeshu vigatas prihaha vitaraga bhaya krodha stitadhir muniruchyate." So Madhusudana Saraswati says in this verse, 56 and 57, Sri Krishna answers the first part of Arjuna's question. How does such a person speak? How does a man of steady wisdom speak? Kim prabhasheta. So here he says, "Dukeshu anudvigmana mana sukeshu vigatas prihaha." Dukeshu, in the midst of all miseries, his mind is unperturbed. In the midst of great miseries, his mind is unperturbed. And sukeshu vigatas prihaha, in the midst of pleasures, his mind is not attracted. Not because he is a dried up prune, not because he is a stoic, not because he hates life, because he has no need for either. He's realized that which is behind both. And he sees that miseries and pleasures and miseries come and go, and they mean nothing to him, because he's attained to that. He's attained to the ocean. And so why should waves bother him? The waves of pleasures and miseries, sufferings and enjoyments, why such things perturb him? He knows the ocean itself. He has the ocean itself. Let waves come and go. Those are just waves. They also are part of the ocean. But they have nothing to do with me. I'm the ocean itself. Is the ocean disturbed by waves? Is the ocean disturbed by hurricanes on the surface? No, the ocean isn't disturbed. We're disturbed because we live on the surface. Because we live on the surface and we're beaten by the waves. But if we were the ocean itself, how could a storm disturb us? And so, dukkeshu anudvigmanamana sukeshu vigataspriyaha vita raga bhaya krodha. He's vita, he's completely free of raga, attraction, bhaya, fear, and krodha, anger. He's free of anger, attraction, or desire, and fear. Stita dhira muni ruchyate. Such a sage is called the person of steady wisdom, because they're free of all of that. So what does that have to do with speech? Again, Arjuna had asked, Stita pragnasya ka bhasha. What is the speech of a person of steady wisdom? And Madhusudana says, this begins the answer of how such a person speaks. Because such a person doesn't express joy or misery in the midst of miseries and pleasures. He doesn't express any, he expresses no fear. How do we know the emotional states of another person? Partly by their facial expressions, but largely by what they say. And so such a person is unperturbed. They speak neither of fear, nor of attraction, nor of anger. Their speech has none of those qualities. And in the midst of pleasures and pains, they're completely undisturbed. Their speech reflects the state of their mind. And the next verse continues about speech, according to Madhusudana, 57. Yas sarvatran abhisnehas tat prapya shubha shubham nabhinandati nadveshti tasya prajna pratishtita. Yas sarvatra anabhisneha tat prapya shubha shubham. So who, attaining whatever, good or bad, whatever comes to such a person, good or bad, is not attached to anything anywhere, sarvatra. Nowhere is he attached to anything. That which comes to him unasked, good or bad, all of it is welcomed. Nabhinandati nadveshti. He doesn't rejoice, nor does he lament, nor does he hate. He doesn't rejoice, nor does he express hatred or lamentation over the things that come to him. And so such is the speech of the person of steady wisdom. They neither lament nor do they rejoice, because the mind is steady. Again, it doesn't mean that they've soured on life, that they are party poopers, that they don't like life, they're misanthropes and all that. No. It's because they have attained to a joy which is beyond the waves of the world. So nothing here can affect them. Nothing here can affect them. So that sounds strange to us, because we're so affected by everything that happens, everything that goes on around us. But to be able to be in that state, that's why, what is the meaning of all of this for us? What does all of this mean to us in our daily life? It's for us to reflect on a step to approximate it. We can begin to approximate it. If we know what the goal is, if we know what it is that we want, what it is to attain, then that's half of the battle itself. Then we know where to orient ourselves, which way to go. And when we are immersed in the pleasurable experiences, then in the midst of those, once we have understood this firmly, and it takes time, but once we've understood it firmly and we have it in our grasp, and we have a comprehension of it. Then in the midst of our pleasures and pains, then we can say, no, 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 I want that, I want that, I want that. It doesn't mean that you can't have good experiences. It doesn't mean that you have to not enjoy anything. No. Good things come to you, and let them come. But if bad things come to you, they also will come. We can try. We spend our whole lives trying to get all of the good things and avoid all of the bad things. But we find that the bad things don't leave us alone. Bad things don't just say that, okay, he doesn't want me, so I'll go play somewhere else. I'll go bother somebody else. No, we all get good experiences and bad experiences in life, no matter how much we try to avoid the bad experiences. And no matter how much we try to have only good experiences, many of the good experiences we chase are constantly running away from us. Get a few, yes, get them. That's okay, enjoy them. There's no harm in that. But know that bad experiences are also going to come. And in the midst of that, let me try again and again to pierce through the waves of life and to find that which is unchanging, that which is permanent, that which is real, behind the waves of life. Let me get to the ocean. Let me come to that. So the wisdom of that person remains established who has no attachment for anything anywhere, sarvatra, who neither praises nor hates anything whatever, good or evil, when he comes across it. So such a person is free. And again, it's not a useless state of freedom. It's not a state of freedom that, well, he's free of life, but he's also free of all of the wonderful things that you can have in life. No. He's attained to the reality behind everything. He's attained to the infinite. If you have the infinite, what is outside of the infinite? Nothing is outside of the infinite. Otherwise, it's not infinite. Infinite means that which has no limitation whatsoever. There's no boundary, there's no border. So in mathematics, we speak of various infinite sets, like the infinite set of whole numbers, the infinite set of rational numbers, the infinite set of numbers between 0 and 1. There's so many infinite sets in mathematics. But they're sets. They're not the real infinite, because they're limited to this. The infinite set of whole numbers is limited to whole numbers, so it's not really infinite. In mathematics, infinite means only that you can't come to the end of enumeration, but you come to the end of the set. As soon as you go outside of whole numbers, the infinite set of whole numbers doesn't include beans, it doesn't include elephants, it doesn't include fingers, it includes whole numbers, that's all it includes. It's not infinite at all. But when you attain the real infinite, the only infinite, there's nothing outside of it. Everything that you ever wanted is inside of it, is a small, small manifestation of it. When you have the thing itself, why do you want a little reflection of it? You don't. If it comes, let it come. If it doesn't come, it doesn't come. Because I am the whole. I realize my identity with the whole. So, verse 58 says, Yada samharate chayam kurmonganiva sarvashah indriyani indriyartebhyas tasya prajna pratisthita. So with 58 for this and these 6 verses beginning with 58, Madhusudana says he's answering the question, how does such a person sit? Stita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava stikadhir kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kimasita. How does such a one sit? So here he tells how such a one sits. So yada samharate chayam kurmongani vasarvashah indriyan indriyartebhyah. When such a one, person of steady wisdom, withdraws his senses from the sense objects, he withdraws the senses from the sense objects, just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell. So just as the tortoise withdraws its limbs into the shell, such a one can withdraw the senses from the sense objects. That is, can become completely internalized. When we sit for meditation, we have to deal with disturbing noises around us. We have to deal with disturbing sensations in the body. We have to deal with so many distractions that are all around us. But the person of steady wisdom has mastered the senses. And when he tells the senses, be still, the senses are completely still. The eyes don't see. Not because he closes his eyes, but because he's told the eyes to stop seeing. The ears stop hearing. The ears are still there, there's sounds around, but nothing is heard. The nose doesn't smell, the skin doesn't touch. Because it's learned the art of withdrawing the sense powers, the ability to perceive sense objects, from the external organs. Such a one has attained mastery of the body, mastery of the mind. So, tasya prajna pratishtita, such a one who can withdraw the sense powers, the power of sense perception from the senses themselves, withdraw them back into the mind, completely internalize the consciousness. Such a one is called a person of steady wisdom, or such a person has their wisdom established, firmly established. So how do they sit? They sit as one like the tortoise who can withdraw the limbs into the shell. You can sit and withdraw all of the senses into the mind and be completely undisturbed by anything. There were many cases with Swami Vivekananda when he was here in America. Just a couple of instances, but there were many, many different such instances with him that were recorded by people who knew him here. Once he was staying with a well-known man, I forget whether it was Chicago or Detroit, whether it was Mr. Palmer in Chicago or it was the Governor Bagley in Detroit. One or the other. And Swamiji was in the library of the home where he was staying, reading a book. And this gentleman, who was Swamiji's host, came into the library and saw Swamiji standing there reading a book and said, "Oh, good morning, Swamiji, how are you?" and tried to talk to him. And Swamiji was just there reading the book and didn't answer. And so the man was offended. Here I addressed the Swami and he doesn't respond to me, so he went out. Later, when Swamiji came and he saw that Swamiji was acting quite normal, so he expressed his dismay. He said, "Well, Swamiji, why this morning I addressed you in the library and you didn't say anything. Why did you behave that way?" And Swamiji said, "Oh, you spoke to me. I didn't hear anything. Because his mind was completely there, absorbed in the book. He never heard the man come up to him and start speaking. There were times in Chicago in the early days until he learned to control the state of his mind, even the tendency of his mind to go into high states. When he would get on the tram, the trolley in Chicago, to go to a certain part of the city for something, perhaps for a class or something, and the tram would come to the end of the line and the conductor would come and stir him and say, "Oh, sir, this is the end of the line." Swamiji would come out from his abstracted state and say, "Oh, I was going to get down at such and such a street. Oh, that passed long ago. Now this is the end of the line. Well, how do I get back there?" "Well, you have to get in a tram that's going back the other way and get down." And that happened many times to Swamiji. When he'd be in this tram, he wasn't sleeping, just completely abstracted, unaware of everything around him. So such a person has steady wisdom. Now we might think that, well, that's awfully inconvenient. You miss your appointments, and what good is a state like that? No, if we could do that, then we wouldn't care about missing our appointments. We would be very blessed if we could have such a high problem. So verse 59 says, "Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate." So the first part of this verse speaks about the niraharasya, one who is very abstinent in food and in all of the activities, a person of great self-control, but not a person of steady wisdom, one who has just practiced self-control. An embodied person who is very austere, very abstinent, who has controlled his appetites and so forth. Vishaya vinivartante. The sense objects turn away from such a person who is very abstinent and who is insisting on controlling himself. The sense objects turn away. Rasa varjam. But the desire for those objects, the taste for those objects remains. So he's controlled himself, and the objects leave him alone because he's controlling himself, but the taste for the objects is still there. But then it goes on to say, Rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Param drishtva, having seen the supreme, that is, having realized the highest truth. Rasopyasya, even the taste for sense objects has disappeared. Even the taste of sense objects has disappeared. So it is said of Sri Chaitanya, a great, great saint and believed to be an incarnation of God, that a piece of sugar candy can be put on his tongue and there would be no saliva that would come from his tongue. He was completely controlled. Not again because he was austere, but because the very taste for the senses had disappeared. So yes, he still ate in order to maintain the body. And he still could know that, well, this is well prepared, that's not well prepared, yes. But he wasn't dependent on any of it, because he had attained that which was beyond all of that. So again, these are very high. This is not what we can expect just from a few days of practice, a few weeks, a few months, a few years of practice. This is the very heights of spirituality. But the value to us in knowing that, and again, as I said, is that we know the direction that we want to go. If we understand this is the direction we want to go, then we've already accomplished a great deal. And that's where I want to go. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I recognize I'm not there yet. But that's where I want to go. And so already we've begun to put a wedge between us and our desires. And in number 60 says, Yatato yapikaunteya purushasya vipaskitaha indriyani pramadhini haranti prasabham manaha. So even an intelligent person who's striving very hard, yatato yapikaunteya, O Kaunteya, that is, O Arjuna, yatato purushasya vipaskitaha, one of great understanding, purushasya, a person of great understanding, yatato, who's striving very hard, who's trying very hard in their spiritual practice. Indriyani pramadhini, the senses are practically uncontrollable. The senses are so disturbing in their activities. Haranti prasabham manaha. They snatch away the mind of such a person. So if a person who's like us, who is practicing, we find the senses are so turbulent. They want their objects of desire. They want their fulfillment. And so they snatch away the mind of a person, even a wise person who is striving with diligence. And so then what are we to do? This is just a warning that this is the nature of the mind and senses. The nature of the mind and senses. And so we have to be canny in the way that we practice. You don't practice by saying, okay, from now on I'm not going to desire anything. I refuse to desire anything. No, the mind's not going to let you do that. The mind's going to throw up, if you say that, then the mind is suddenly going to throw up 1,001 desires and say, I want all 1,001 of them right now, and you're going to get it for me. So in the midst of the mind being snatched away by the senses and by desire, in the midst of that, then we know that yes, this is the nature of the mind, this is the nature of the senses. They go after their little fulfillments. But in the midst of that, I'm going to keep turning my mind towards the ocean, not towards the waves. I'm going to keep turning my mind towards God. I'm going to keep turning my mind towards the self. I'm going to keep turning the mind towards my own inner being, which is eternally free. So let the mind and senses do what they will, but I'm not going to give up completely. I'm going to keep turning my mind in this direction. And by doing that, someday the senses will give up. Someday the mind will give up. So again, don't tell the mind and senses, I refuse to desire anything, I refuse to cooperate. It's not going to let you. Do what you can. One thing that we can do is to simplify. When the mind says that I want to make $1 billion, I'm going to be a billionaire, you say, what am I going to do with $1 billion? I need to make money, I need to have a home, I need to provide for those who are dependent on me, I have some things that I want to do, I'll make some money, but I don't need $1 billion. When the mind says, I want the biggest and most expensive and most beautiful new Tesla, and it'll be a wonderful car, and just think what people will think when I drive through the streets of Houston in my new Tesla, and I'll be helping the environment at the same time. You know that, oh no, I don't need a brand new Tesla. I don't have the money for it. Why should I be a slave of money in order to make a Tesla just so I can drive through the streets and have people look at me? What is that going to do? I need a car, so let me get a Prius. That will do. So in verse 61, Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasyendriyani tasya prajna pratishtita. Tani sarvani sanyamya, controlling all of them. That is, those senses which are so disturbing, which violently snatch away the mind. Learn to control them. Again, not by violence and suppressing them, because that won't work, as Sri Krishna just said and as he says elsewhere. But by gradual control. How does one control a Mustang, a wild horse? How does one control a wild horse? By getting on the back of it and staying there. And the horse is going to try everything to throw you off. What you have to do is to remain on the horse. And eventually the horse is going to give up. So you don't get on the Mustang and start beating it and saying, you're going to obey me, and damn it, if you don't obey me, I'm going to beat you even harder. No, you're going to get thrown for sure that way. But you just get on it and just stay on it. Just refuse to get off. You don't have to do anything else. So sit on your senses and just say, I'm here for the ride. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for the ride. Sooner or later you're going to get quiet. And I'm just waiting for that. So I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to let you go. I'm not going to beat you either. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to suppress you. But I'm also not going to leave you alone. I'm just going to sit here until you get tired of me sitting here and you begin to behave yourselves. And so, Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matpara, controlling all of them and becoming concentrated. Yukta, one should remain seated. Asita, matpara, asita, one remains seated. That is, one remains steady within oneself. Matparaha, with me as supreme. Here, as so often in the Gita, Sri Krishna speaks of himself as the self itself, as the divine being itself, as reality itself. And that, from a Vedantic standpoint, is what Christ did in the Christian Bible, in the Christian texts. When Christ speaks of himself as the way, the truth, and the life, he's speaking the same words that Sri Krishna spoke. But in the Gita, to recognize that Sri Krishna was speaking of himself as principle. He didn't mean I, Krishna, who was the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, but I who am the reality, manifested in this form as Sri Krishna. So I who am the Christ, the reality itself, manifested in this form. It's not this body and mind that was born of Joseph and Mary, that's the way, the truth, and the life. It's I who am God himself, itself, divinity itself, am the way, the truth, and the life. Through me, the self, the infinite reality, will come to the highest truth. And so controlling all of these senses and becoming concentrated, one should remain seated, that is, steady within oneself, by accepting me as the supreme, mat paraha. For the wisdom of one whose organs are under control becomes steadfast. Vashehi yasya indriyani. Of him whose senses are under control, tasya prajna pratishtita. His wisdom is steady. His wisdom is well established. Nothing can shake such a person from their state of wisdom. For the rest of us, we have to be careful because we go forward in spiritual life and we can regress also. So we go forward and try to keep moving forward, try to make every step forward that we make, try to make it permanent, try to get established in every step forward that we make. But for such a person, there's no returning, there's no backsliding, there's no fear of regression. Because such a one has attained to everything, identified with the reality, gone beyond the reach of ignorance, beyond the reach of delusion. So for such a one, their wisdom is established. So now we've come back to where we were at the end of July. So let me close here as far as the commentary goes, my commentary, and see if there are any questions at this point before we close the class itself. If there are any questions or comments. Okay, no questions? Oh, okay, sure. Give the microphone. Good.
When you mentioned Sthita Pragyasa explaining to us, I was thinking of the sacred neutral that when I saw it in one of your emails.
Now you were talking about the what? You were thinking about the what?
Sthita Pragyasa, Sthita Pragyasa. We were defining Sthita Pragyasa,
Yeah.
and at one time, and I was thinking what you were talking about is the sacred neutral.
Oh, sacred neutral.
Yeah, and then I was reading out the sacred neutral, and it's really.
People
maybe you can if you tell us something more about it.
People are always asking me, what did you say about such and such in your lecture yesterday? I have no idea what I said. So it took me a minute to recognize, oh, you're talking about what I wrote when I was in the hospital recently. Yes. So for those of you who may not remember or who didn't see the updates I sent from my recent vacation in the hospital, I talked about sacred neutral, that is, putting the mind in a space where we just observe. That is not yet the state of Asthita Prajna, but I'm not there, that's what I'm struggling for, I'm not there, but that's a step on the way. And so what I meant by sacred neutral is that when I was in the hospital and in great pain, and it was because of the constant pain and discomfort as well as pain, and just being in a hospital with the tubes and everything, it was relatively easy to withdraw the mind from everything because everything was broken and everything was painful. And so to just withdraw the mind into a place of quiet from where you know the world is there, you hear the sounds and everything, and not completely cut off from the senses, and yet it's out there, it's not within me. Normally we feel that the world is penetrating me, but here it's possible to come to a state, and in that case it was greatly aided by the fact that everything was so painful. It was better not to stay there in the midst of the pain, to withdraw the mind and to just stay in sacred neutral. So I called it sacred neutral because it was not a state where I was trying to do anything. I was trying to withdraw into a state of quiet, a state of detachment, a state of freedom from the problems of the external world. Because at that time, whenever I would come back fully engaged, then it was nothing but problems, pain, and Nurses coming, even at night, every half an hour, nurses coming in. They were very good nurses. They were wonderful, so I'm not complaining about them at all. They were such wonderful people. I was really fortunate to have such blessed nurses. But it's part of their duty, especially when you're in critical care, coming every half an hour and prodding you and saying, oh, we got to take your blood pressure, we got to take your temperature. So you're in the hospital trying to get better from injury, and they don't even let you sleep. Every half hour coming in and prodding and poking. How in the world are you supposed to get well? So in that state, just, okay, close it all out. Let me just go back into sacred neutral. Again, I called it sacred neutral because I wasn't trying to go anywhere else. I was just trying to bring the mind into a centered state where the mind just sat within itself, within a space of quiet, within a space of silence. And let me say also, because now time is up, I'll just say the other side of it to give balance to it. And when I came back here several days ago, I've been back here for more than a week now. I've been back here. I was in the hospital for 15 days, and I've been back here for about 10 days. And so after coming back here, I couldn't sleep, because in the hospital they were giving pain medication and also sleeping medication. And so when I came back here, I couldn't sleep. I still am having terrible trouble sleeping. And so the mind, after several days of not sleeping day or night, the mind mind can only take so much. And so then I found that going into sacred neutral was impossible, because the mind doesn't have the strength. The mind is disturbed. The mind is not able to. And so at that time, then what do you do? What did I do? Then the only thing to do at that time, when the mind is refusing to cooperate because you can't get sleep, the mind isn't getting any rest, then just to keep trying, just remembering that yes, there is that quiet place, let me just remember that, and to use the mantra if you have a mantra, to use prayer if you pray, to call on God, to call on the self, just to please help me, just to get back to the ocean, So even when you feel that you've been separated from the ocean, and the ocean is far away and you can't get to it, and there's only noise in between and nothing but noise, and the mind won't cooperate, but still you have the memory. You can remember that no, there is something higher. There is a state of freedom from this. Let me try to get back to that. Let me pray, call out to Gatistvam, you alone are the refuge, you alone are the safe harbor, you alone are my help. Pahimam nityam, protect me always, Rakshamam, protect me. If you can't do anything else at times like that, then just to do that, just cry out. And if all you can do is cry, then just cry. But cry for that. Don't cry for yourself. Don't cry, poor me. Don't cry for somebody else. Cry for God. Cry for reality. Cry for the self. And just try to hold on to that. So, when we can go into sacred neutral and escape all of the noise of the world and just to be there, wonderful. When that's taken away from us, then just cry. When I was a young monk in Michigan, southwestern Michigan, at our ashram there was a very fine devotee, a long-time devotee from Chicago. He was a disciple of the old Swami Vishwananda, who died before I ever came to Vedanta. But he was a fine devotee, Jack Hicks. So he was very funny. He came up to help us at the monastery in Michigan from Chicago sometimes in the summer. He'd help us work on the farm. And so he told me when he came up one time, he said, I've got a new mantra. And I said, oh, Jack, I knew that he was joking because he was always joking. So I said, oh, Jack, what is that? He said, help, help. And so I thought, that's a wonderful mantra. So if you can't do anything else, then just cry for help. Just cry for help. Because what we want to do is to never let go. Don't let go. Don't let anything make you let go. So when you can go inside, do that. When you can't, then just cry to go back inside. And again, not crying out of self-pity, not crying out of anything else, but just because, no, I can't bear this. I can't bear this. Let me go back to that. Let me go back to. Don't abandon me in this state. Don't abandon me in this state. So, okay, so I'll say a closing prayer and then a couple of announcements. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. That infinite reality is full, perfect, and complete. This relative universe is full, perfect, and complete. From out of the fullness of that infinite being, the fullness of this universe has come. And yet that reality remains ever the same. Oh, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe. So Thursday morning,